Welcome to another edition of the Metal Voice. I hate you.
Why do you hate me so much? Why do you hate me? Why?
You're illiterate.
I'm Peter Chris. I'm the Catman. I'm the Catman.
You don't have no class. You're from the streets.
I can play drums. Yes, I can.
Your timing's off.
What are you talking about? Oh, come on.
Slow down. Speed up.
I invented everything.
I love this guy. I love this guy, but he's not invited to my wedding. This guy's crazy. He's got the.
I invented Kiss. It's me, money. All right, welcome to another edition of the Metal Voice.
It's been some time since we've gone into the book club, and we're going to do today Paul Stanley, Face the Music, A Life Exposed.
Exposed.
Upon doing the previous reviews of Peter Criss,
we did all of them.
Ace Frehley, and Gene Simmons, we remember saying, Paul, it's your turn. Well, guess what? It's Paul's turn.
It's Paul's turn.
So, what do you think, Jim? This is Paul's story. So we've got all four now.
Alan, yes, we've done the collection. We've completed the collection. The drama is complete.
There you go.
I think Paul shouldn't have had a star. He should have had some sort of army paint. The soldier. He soldiered on when Kiss completely fell apart.
Hey.
He is the glue. And as much as I didn't like him beforehand, now I have a new appreciation for Paul Stanley. I really enjoyed the book. It's about deformation on his ear. A lot of people don't know this.
Yeah.
I didn't even know this. I didn't know this when I was young and I used to listen to Kiss. As you can see, Kiss.
He's deaf in one ear, basically, is what he's saying.
Yeah.
And that was quite the revelation.
Yeah.
So I think, again, Jim, you know what I found the strength of the book was, it seems to be an honest account of what he believed to have happened, but it's more of a, I don't want to say a self-help book, but it's more of his journey.
Yes.
To go from being a child that everybody made fun of because of his deformity, and to gain the confidence back, to break down the walls that he was forced to put up to isolate himself from this type of ridicule. And break down those walls over time to learn to trust and have faith in people and feel comfortable with himself. So I think it's more of his personal journey, and which differs a lot from the other books, the other three members. Yeah. So if you look at it from that context, it's quite a very interesting read. So
Gene Simmons was, let's say, I'm the money machine behind it, and I've invented everything, and then Ace Frehley was like completely spaced out. Peter Criss was sort of like this punk, we call him a punk, sort of in his band, and suddenly he's out of control, his life is completely out of control, where Paul Stanley was more of a civilized, I love touring.
Aloof.
I love touring, I love recording, he wanted to absorb everything. And I couldn't relate more to Paul Stanley than to anybody, minus the clothes and the fashion, right? I could relate to Paul Stanley because if I was in a band, I would want to enjoy that experience of being in a recording studio, not, missing out on it or running off to do movies like Gene Simmons and et cetera, et cetera.
He mentions that in the book, Jim, you're right, because he says Tommy Thayer always had being a huge Kiss fan, he always thought that the real rockers were Ace and Peter, but after going on tour, the reunion tour with them, they said these guys don't care about their fans at all. It's really Paul and Gene that are the ones that are making sure that everything goes smoothly to bring the best show possible to the fans. And Paul had a little chuckle over that observation because he had known that and realized that for years. If you're drunk and you can't play, or you're throwing up in a bucket at the side of the stage or whatever, it's not really adding to the benefit to the fans. Whereas Gene and Paul always put on the top. For Paul, it was always about the show. For the fans, was primordial and the number one thing. So again, on the downside, Jim, what I found, it's almost as if, okay, everybody had their say. Yeah. Let's take the same situations and let's talk about those situations. So in a 40-year career, or 50 years, how many we're going on to, why are we only talking about the same episodes that that Ace talked about, that Peter talked about, that Gene talked about, that Slash talked about? Well, now, okay, Slash trashed me in his book, so I'm going to give my version of what happened, and I'll trash Slash in my book. So that was a little disappointing. You got to think there's a little bit more. things that happen in their career that
I don't know. I kind of like
stand
that.
out a little bit more than the ones we've heard 4 times. Yes, you get a different perspective, so that's interesting. But why are we always focusing on the same scenarios?
What I found interesting was how he completely destroyed Peter Criss.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, if you listen to the first few albums, his drumming's not that bad. I don't know what happened behind the scene. I would assume that
drugs and alcohol.
I would assume that
massive quantities.
I mean, he was a fairly good drummer. I mean, it's not Neil Peart, but I mean, he was a great drummer. I mean, I don't see nothing wrong with his drumming. And to like completely destroy him, it's not like Paul Stanley's a great guitar player. I mean, let's just be honest here. I mean, Paul Stanley's just as good as guitar. Actually, Peter Criss is probably a better drummer than Paul Stanley as a guitar player. It's not like he's some sort of Yngwie Malmsteen here. Let's be honest, right? I mean, that's why they always hired the best guitarists in their band, because Paul Stanley is a rhythm guitarist. He's a songwriter. He's a singer. A great singer.
I mean, again, like we said on the previous reviews of the other books, I think, the truth lies somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And let's face it, Peter was a hugely popular member of the Kiss family.
Yeah.
Back in the 70s, Peter was one of the most popular guys. Paul, I would have to say, because of the androgyny, was probably the least popular. So there's probably some fiction, some jealousy there, because Paul's working his butt off. He's writing all the songs. He's the front man out there. He's trying to get everybody up on their seat. And Peter, especially after Beth hit, which he really denigrates Peter's portion of that, his writing credit on that.
Basically saying he didn't even touch the song.
Bob Ezrin let him sing on it, kind of thing, if you listen to Paul, which I don't think is completely the case.
And it was actually his other stuff.
But Bob Ezrin, like he does, he puts his signature in a lot. So there's a lot. Again, I think there's some jealousy that led to that over time, and it's valid. Paul, like you said, is the one that carried it through, especially in the '80s when Gene was off doing whatever and had his focus on everything else except the band.
Yeah.
And Gene readily admits that today. It was Paul that kept the band going and kept things strong. And when you had the 80s frontman with the hair metal, that became all the more popular, Paul was in his element. Gene was less in his element, taking off the makeup. He was very uncomfortable with that, but Paul was in his glory. Finally, I can be the frontman that I've always wanted to be, and he was a great frontman.
Yeah.
So again, the going on into where it leads for Kiss, and the members are irreplaceable, and even he kind of cringed at some of the promotions, the lunch boxes and stuff they were doing, but he's kind of come to grips with it. There's stuff in there, but again, I overall a great read. I enjoyed it. Probably one of the ones I enjoyed the most.
Yeah.
Ace, like you said, Ace he probably doesn't remember half of what's going on. There's a whole tour that he doesn't remember anything
It's
about,
amazing how they actually became their characters, or they were their characters to begin with. Like Gene Simmons was always that sort of demon, and Paul was the rock star, and Ace the space ace, and Peter Criss that cat with 9 lives, right? They've sort of evolved into these roles, and you could see it in the book how prevalent they all are. I mean, I don't know. It's amazing how Tommy Thayer should be in the band. I believe he should be in the band, and so Eric Singer should be too. But I don't know about the face paint. It's kind of which goes into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Do they deserve a place in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? I think they don't. I mean, if I'm gonna pretend to be Alan, I mean, I don't. Pretending to be anyone, you shouldn't be there because you're pretending to be someone. You should be there because you've contributed in your own original way. And I think that goes to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame debate, where I think they're great, Tommy Thayer, they're great, Eric Singer. I understand why they want to keep them in the band, because Peter Criss and Ace are completely unreliable. Who wants to run a business, or anything for that matter, when people don't even show up to work, right?
That's it, exactly.
And as much as I love Ace, he's actually my favorite Kiss member. Ace Frehley is my favorite, and I'm waiting for his new album to come out. I could sympathize with how difficult it must have been
to deal with
these two people. Yeah,
and they had to, unsurmountable amount of patience. I find. They should have sacked them 3 or 4 times. And let's face it, here's $1 million. You're playing clubs that you'd be lucky to clear $30,000 a year. Here's $1 million. Come on tour with us. What are you complaining about? So, this closes off, I guess, the four members. This is the 4th book. This closes off the loop. You got Paul's version of everything. So you can weigh his version against the other versions and choose to believe whom you want for yourself.
Yeah.
But a good read, I would highly recommend it. Go out there, buy it, and hats off Paul Stanley for being what I think brutally honest and with all members and not just picking on one or two. So.
I'm waiting for Vinnie Vincent's autobiography.
Mass confusion, total decay.